Alright, we got a fast castle build from the Roost. This build has been taking the ladder by storm in an absolutely oppressive way. It's just so cheap. Once you look at the cavalry archers price, you're just like, man, why is anyone doing anything else but this? And it's just so good. And there's a couple ways to play it with, your chapel, or if you want to get the high trade house, and there's a couple of different things to talk about. So let's get right into it. We got immediately 5 on food, and then we put 1 on the haunted cabin, and we're just queuing up house right after that. We're getting a lumber camp right after that. So we're immediately just making the scout, and this house is maybe a little bit earlier than you might normally make, but because we're making a scout and Ville at the same time, it actually works out perfectly. And we're just gonna put this Ville onto wood after that. And in total, we're just gonna go up to 10 food, and we're gonna start rallying into wood to about 6 on wood. Of course, play Roost, you know how this works. Just killing as many wolves as possible, and in many different times at the same time. And in total, we'll want to get about 4 scouts, because we won't really get a good chance to make scouts once we start making the landmark in feudal, because we're going to be pulling 6 onto the landmark. So we'll talk about that one as we get there, but just getting our 4th scout now, really getting on the map, trying to figure out where the deer are. Luckily, we found 2 pretty quickly, and that is usually good enough for me, to be honest, especially with as many wolves as there are. Now, something important to note about this is we're going to be focusing entirely on food and wood. We're not going to be getting any gold. We're just getting entirely from hunting and then later trading. So we're getting the high trade house, or rather the golden gate. I got my landmarks messed up. So golden gate is great for trading, and we're going to be trading all of our wood for the gold. And really not a big time limit on how quickly we trade up, because they'll stock up the charges, but that is kind of the goal whenever you remember. Trade them up, and good stuff. Now, something important to note is we put 6 onto the feudal landmark, and we had 4 left, which is just enough to make villagers one at a time. 4 vills on food, perfect amount for just making vills, but not enough if we still needed a scout. So that's why you need to get all your scouts before this landmark goes down, because 6 are going on there, and you just don't have time to get any more after that, because we're going to be going straight into professional scouts after that. Now, important to note, we got a wooden fortress going down. We are versing the French, and the knights are absolutely deadly. You want to do this versus French civs, English civs, anybody with a really strong feudal, really. And having a nice wooden fortress on your woodline is fantastic. Definitely recommend that, even if it ends up being a little bit more lumber camp distance. Now, we have a lot on food here. Just rallying into food, trying to get the professional scouts. At this point, we have 15 on food. This is when we start looking towards going back onto the wood, and we are just looking to get as many deer as we possibly can. In this game, actually, this French player went very many scouts, didn't really go into knights at all, and just played more passive. So we kind of had this scout scuffle, and I ended up going into more scouts. But for the most part, it's usually just avoiding contact as much as possible. If they do end up having a lot of knights, you can just go to far hunts where they might not be able to quite find you, or even finding their hunts off to the side can be a pretty good way to go around if they're camping like this kind of hunt, stuff like that. Gotta have to maneuver around. But we're at 7 minutes here. We made a couple extra scouts, so we could have actually aged up a little quicker here, but it still ends up being a pretty strong timing. Just going straight into the high trade house. Now the monastery is also pretty good. It's especially good if you're versus like an HRE or something that really needs those relics. You can kind of use them to stop them because they're so quick. But for the most part, I think high trade house is just better. The deer income's pretty good. Of course, I didn't really get much out of the the increased gold with my high trade house next to the hunting cabin, but it's no big deal. Now, This was a little bit delayed because of the extra scouts, but even with this 830, 840 rather coming in, and we have 3 ranges ready to go. Now 3 range is a great number for passing out cav archers like this, and only need the food in wood, so it's absolutely no big deal. You have all that all caught up with deer, wood's coming in just fine, and you can do a lot with this. I mean, the options are pretty much limitless. If you need upgrades, you can just put down a blacksmith and trade out some wood for some gold. With this, you might even find yourself a little bit food heavy as you kind of try to balance out the food and wood ratio, and you kind of see me, yeah, moving on over to the wood there. And from here, it's pretty much just being as aggressive as possible with your cav archers as you can, finding openings, you know, pretty standard stuff all in all. And you'll probably find a lot of archer builds defending, but these are so cheap that you can actually fight archers a lot of times and it'll be just okay. I think some people coming from Mangudai with the Mongols might feel a little bit weird about fighting archers, but if you have a decent amount of number, it's totally worth trading because it costs nothing and you actually do quite a bit of damage. So you see me going to these pokes and stuff like that, trying to kill workers, do a little bit of damage here while getting some flanks in. You know, he can't even mine these berries, right? He has to go off gold completely. And you can really just see how oppressive this build is. And yeah, there's a couple different ways to transition off of this. You could very easily go into your gold and get some lancers, or even just go straight into siege workshop. I think both can be pretty good depending on the situation. You know, if they're going heavy into archers, getting some lancers to mix them up can be really strong. If they're maybe going a little bit more heavy units, you know, going springolds can be really good too. I think that's quite strong in the right situation. So this is kind of just the first 10 minutes of how to play it, and it's all just kind of working on how you want to play from there.